Stage and screen legend Julie Andrews, beloved for her performances in Mary Poppins and The Sound of Music, has taken on a different role in recent years, that of a children's book author.
For decades, Julie Andrews has been the face of grace, class, and timeless talent. From Mary Poppins to The Sound of Music, she built a career that seemed untouched by drama or scandal. But behind the dazzling smile and perfect poise, few knew the truth about the one co-star she truly despised. Yes, even the famously kind and elegant Julie Andrews had someone she couldn't stand working with. And when the cameras stopped rolling, their feud became one of the most whispered secrets in Hollywood history. It wasn't just a difference of personality, it was personal. The tension between them spilled into interviews, rehearsals, and even the set itself. Crew members described the air as ice cold whenever they had to perform together. To the public, Julie maintained her composure. But insiders say her frustration reached a breaking point during one unforgettable confrontation that changed their relationship forever. Over time, the truth began to leak, quiet rumors that turned into shocking revelations. Fans couldn't believe that the woman known for her charm and warmth was capable of such deep resentment. But when you uncover what really happened between Julie Andrews and the woman she couldn't forgive, it all starts to make sense. Because beneath the Hollywood glamour lies a story of betrayal, rivalry, and heartbreak, a story Julie herself tried to bury for years. And now as the truth finally resurfaces, it reveals a side of her that few ever expected to see. To understand the depth of Julie Andrews' quiet resentment, we need to go back to the late 1960s, the height of her fame and the beginning of one of the most complicated professional relationships of her life. Julie had already become a global icon. She wasn't just a movie star. She was a symbol of class, discipline, and near perfection. When she walked onto a set, everyone knew they were in the presence of Hollywood royalty. But her next project would challenge that image like never before, and it began with the arrival of another actress who refused to stay in Julie's shadow. That woman was none other than her Victoria co-star, Leslie Ann Warren, a rising talent known for her fiery attitude and unfiltered confidence. While Julie preferred precision and quiet professionalism, Leslie brought chaos and intensity to every scene. Their approaches to acting couldn't have been more different. Julie rehearsed meticulously, valuing structure and control. Leslie thrived on emotion and spontaneity. What began as creative differences soon turned into a cold war of egos behind the camera. Insiders recall moments when Julie would pause mid-rehearsal, glancing at the director with thinly veiled frustration, while Leslie rolled her eyes, unafraid to challenge her legendary co-star. The tension grew so thick that even the crew avoided standing between them. One crew member later described it as watching fire and ice collide. Julie's graceful composure started to crack. She wasn't used to being challenged, especially by someone so young and brash. But it wasn't just about professionalism. There were deeper insecurities at play. Julie, though adored by millions, had begun to feel the pressure of aging in a business obsessed with youth. Leslie's arrival, full of energy and confidence, reminded her of the next generation waiting to take her place. And when Leslie began receiving praise from critics for her bold performances, it quietly stung. To the world, Julie Andrews was untouchable. But inside, jealousy and pride began to mix into something far more toxic. Rumors quickly spread around Hollywood. Reporters whispered about a rift between the two actresses, though neither would speak publicly. Julie dismissed the idea when asked in interviews, saying only that creative tension makes good art. Yet those who worked closely with her knew she meant every word differently. The quiet strain began to affect filming. Certain scenes had to be reshot because their chemistry was missing, and off-camera, they rarely spoke. The breaking point came during one heated argument on set. According to production notes and testimonies, Leslie criticized Julie's old-fashioned style of acting, calling it too mechanical for modern audiences. For Julie, who prided herself on her technique and career longevity, that was an unforgivable insult. She walked off set in silence, refusing to return until the director mediated. Though they completed the film, their relationship never healed. Julie would later say privately that she never wanted to see her again. Years later, both women went on to successful careers, but the bitterness lingered. Whenever Julie's name came up in interviews, Leslie avoided comment, while Julie, ever the professional, mentioned her co-star only in passing, never with warmth. Even decades later, insiders say Julie's dislike for Leslie Ann Warren remained one of the few grudges she never let go of. Because for all her poise and charm, Julie Andrews was still human, capable of envy, anger, and heartbreak. And this rivalry wasn't just about two women fighting for attention. It was about the painful reality of watching your legacy threatened by someone you never expected to challenge you. While Julie Andrews maintained her elegant public image, the bitterness she felt toward Leslie Ann Warren continued to echo quietly behind closed doors. Hollywood insiders described how Julie, though never one for gossip, would subtly avoid projects or appearances that involved Leslie. She wasn't vindictive. She simply refused to reopen old wounds. But the resentment wasn't born purely from ego. There was something far deeper, something that stemmed from Julie's lifelong dedication to perfection, a standard she held herself to so tightly that anyone who disrupted it felt like a personal threat. You see, Julie had always been known as the ultimate professional, the actress who never lost her temper, who arrived early, who treated everyone with respect. Her entire reputation was built on grace and order. Leslie, on the other hand, embodied the complete opposite: wild, impulsive, and unrestrained. Where Julie saw chaos, Leslie saw creativity, and that clash of values represented something Julie feared most: losing control. As filming went on, their differences grew sharper. Julie began to feel that Leslie was deliberately trying to steal scenes, improvising lines or changing expressions to draw the audience's eye. Crew members noticed the tension. When Leslie entered the room, Julie's polite smile would fade just slightly. There was no shouting, no dramatic confrontation, just a deep, icy distance that everyone could feel. Privately, Julie confided in close friends about her frustrations. She reportedly said that working with Leslie was like performing a duet where the other singer refuses to stay in tune. That comment, later repeated by insiders, summed up their relationship perfectly. Julie, ever the perfectionist, believed acting was a harmony of balance and discipline. Leslie treated it like a storm, unpredictable and raw. Their final weeks of filming were some of the most uncomfortable Julie had ever experienced. She kept her professionalism intact, never letting her emotions affect her work. But once filming wrapped, she left the set without saying goodbye. To her, it was over, or so she thought. Years later, fate would test that decision again. In the early 1980s, producers approached Julie with a proposal to reunite the two actresses for a new project, one that would play off their old chemistry. When she learned that Leslie was being considered for the role, Julie flatly refused. Her words were simple but firm: no, not with her. It was rare for Julie to reject a project so abruptly, but those who knew her best said it wasn't about pride. It was about peace. She didn't want to revisit an experience that had drained so much of her emotionally. Ironically, as the years passed, the public narrative began to shift. Leslie Ann Warren spoke in interviews about her admiration for Julie's talent, even calling her an inspiration. She never addressed their feud directly, but her tone suggested a hint of regret. Julie, however, remained silent. When asked about Leslie in a late 1990s interview, she smiled politely and replied, "Some collaborations are easier than others." That single sentence spoke volumes. By then, Julie had endured far greater challenges: her devastating vocal surgery, the loss of her singing voice, and the struggle to redefine herself as an actress. But even as she faced personal tragedy, she never reopened that old chapter with Leslie. The wound had simply scarred over, quietly, permanently. The story of Julie Andrews and Leslie Ann Warren is rarely told today, partly because both women moved on to successful lives and careers. But for those who witnessed their rivalry firsthand, it remains one of Hollywood's most fascinating unspoken feuds. Reminder that even the most graceful icons can harbor silent storms. Because behind Julie's legendary smile was a woman who fought daily to preserve her dignity in a world that constantly tested it. And sometimes, holding on to that grace meant walking away from those who refused to understand it. As time passed, Julie Andrews' reputation as one of Hollywood's most beloved figures only grew stronger. she became a symbol of resilience, elegance, and quiet strength. The actress who overcame tragedy and carried herself with unwavering grace. But the story of her feud with Leslie Ann Warren lingered like a shadow that refused to disappear. Even decades later, fans and insiders continued to speculate about what really caused Julie's deep dislike, and whether there had ever been a chance for reconciliation. In truth, Julie's feelings toward Leslie were rooted in more than artistic rivalry. Those who knew her privately say that she felt deeply disrespected by how Leslie treated her during the filming of Victoria. Julie had worked tirelessly to create a positive, collaborative environment, but she felt Leslie saw her as a rival to defeat rather than a mentor to learn from. For Julie, who had spent her career respecting her co-stars and mentors, that kind of attitude was unforgivable. When the movie was released, critics praised both actresses, but the media loved to stir the pot. Articles began comparing their performances, highlighting Leslie's youthful energy against Julie's refined precision. Though Julie never publicly acknowledged it, those comparisons hurt her deeply. For the first time, she felt as if the industry she'd given everything to was starting to overlook her. And in that wound, resentment toward Leslie took root, not simply as anger, but as a painful reminder of how fragile fame could be. Even so, Julie never lashed out publicly. That wasn't her way. Instead, she chose silence, a silence that spoke louder than words. For years, she avoided events where Leslie would appear, and when their names were mentioned together in interviews, her smile would tighten just enough to give away the truth. But fate has a way of bringing unresolved emotions back into focus. In the early 2000s, during a charity gala in Los Angeles, Julie and Leslie unexpectedly found themselves in the same room for the first time in decades. Witnesses say Julie appeared calm and poised, while Leslie, perhaps sensing the tension, kept her distance. They didn't speak that night, no apology, no confrontation, just a brief exchange of glances that said everything words couldn't. Those who saw it said Julie's expression was one of quiet sadness, not anger. It was as if she'd finally accepted that some bridges were better left burned. Still, even in her silence, Julie learned something from the experience. Her rivalry with Leslie reminded her that Hollywood could test even the kindest souls. It taught her that protecting one's peace sometimes meant walking away, even from people who shared the same dreams. Years later, when Julie began mentoring younger actors, she often spoke about humility, patience, and kindness on set. Though she never mentioned Leslie by name, those close to her believed those lessons were born from that painful chapter. Meanwhile, Leslie Ann Warren continued to show admiration for Julie in interviews. In one appearance, she called Julie a class act and said that working with her had been a privilege. Whether that was genuine respect or quiet reconciliation, no one knows. But for Julie, forgiveness was complicated. She believed in moving forward, not necessarily forgetting, but finding peace in acceptance. By the time Julie entered her later years, her feud with Leslie had faded from the headlines. What remained was her unmatched legacy, a woman who gave the world magic through her voice, discipline, and spirit. Yet behind that legacy lay a truth she never denied, that even the kindest hearts can be hurt, and even the most graceful stars can carry memories they'd rather forget. And for Julie Andrews, that memory was forever tied to one co-star who reminded her that not all harmony can be found, even in the world's most beautiful song. In the later chapters of her extraordinary life, Julie Andrews found herself reflecting more often, not on fame or fortune, but on the people and experiences that shaped her. She once said in an interview, "The hardest lessons are the ones that teach you how to stay kind," and perhaps no lesson defined that truth more than her turbulent relationship with Leslie Ann Warren. What began as a clash of personalities had become a lifelong reminder of how even the most composed hearts can be wounded by disappointment. By the time Julie reached her 70s, she had endured more pain than most could imagine. The surgery that damaged her legendary voice left a void that could never be filled. Yet instead of retreating from the spotlight, she reinvented herself, becoming an author, a mentor, and a voice of grace for generations who adored her. Still, those closest to her knew she never completely let go of certain memories. Her rivalry with Leslie wasn't something she spoke of often, but it remained one of the few things that had truly tested her spirit. In Hollywood, where egos often clash and relationships crumble, Julie's quiet dignity set her apart. She never lashed out, never sought revenge, but there was a cost to that composure. She carried her pain inward. Those who worked with her later in life often described her as serene but distant, as if she'd learned to guard her heart too well. Perhaps that distance was a form of self-protection, a way to ensure she would never again be hurt by someone she trusted. Meanwhile, Leslie Ann Warren continued to build her own career, always speaking of Julie with admiration in her later years. Some fans even speculated that Leslie had tried to make peace privately, though there's no public record of any reconciliation. Whether forgiveness ever came between them remains one of Hollywood's quiet mysteries. What's clear is that both women carried that shared history for the rest of their lives, one through regret, the other through silence. Julie's journey reminds us that perfection is often a mask for pain. To the world, she was the epitome of charm, grace, and professionalism. But beneath that polished exterior was a woman who had struggled, not only with loss, but with the realization that not every relationship can be mended. Her dislike for Leslie wasn't fueled by cruelty or jealousy, but by heartbreak, the heartbreak of being misunderstood by someone she once hoped to respect. As the years went on, Julie seemed to find peace in her own way. She poured her energy into her family, her books, and her passion for the arts. She became a beloved figure not just for her talent, but for her resilience, a living testament to the idea that kindness and strength can coexist, even when life tests both. And though she never publicly revisited her feud, it's likely that in her quiet moments, she found a way to forgive, not for others, but for herself. Today, when fans look back on Julie Andrews' legendary career, they see a woman who defined an era, an actress who turned every challenge into grace. But behind the curtain of elegance lies a powerful truth. Even the brightest stars cast shadows. Her unspoken feud with Leslie Ann Warren may have been one of those shadows, yet it never diminished her light. Because at her core, Julie Andrews was more than just an icon. She was human, capable of hurt, of pride, and of forgiveness. And perhaps that's what made her so beloved. She wasn't perfect. She was real. And maybe in the quiet of her heart, she finally learned that sometimes hatred isn't the opposite of love. It's just love that's been wounded, waiting for peace.